Well, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the White House Champions of Change. We thank everyone for coming here today to be a part of our Black History Month events that we've had here at the White House for the past several days. My name is Heather Foster, and why I am out of breath and also almost a bit speechless today is because I direct African American outreach here at the White House, and we have had a very busy month of activities, everything from the State of the Union to the President traveling to Chicago to hosting a Doing Business in Africa forum where we had business leaders come in to talk about doing business in the continent of Africa. And then also we have had a wonderful opportunity to do the event that we're doing here today. Champions of Change is something that we launched here at the White House in the honor of making sure that we look at everyday citizens who are doing the great work of the policies across the country. And today we decided to focus on education. So we have 10 individuals from across the country that were nominated by the Department of Education. We'll be honoring the great work that they do around education, specifically for African American students. So I don't want to take too much of your time, but I do want to point out a couple of things. Yes, we are being live streamed live on the net. So if you know someone that couldn't get in today, they can watch it at www.whitehouse.gov/champions, and we'll have that on our screen soon. And then also we encourage you to tweet. So if you like to use social media, if you're on Facebook or Twitter, I want to make sure that you join the conversation that we have here today, and the hashtag is #WHChamps. So once again, that's #WHChamps. So I thank everyone for coming today. I want to make sure that we honor Congresswoman Wilson, who is here in the front seat. Just let's give her a round. And so now at this time, I'm going to turn things over to our senior White House staff, Mr. Michael Strautmanis, who is the Deputy Assistant to the President on Strategic Engagement. He's going to give some welcome remarks from our senior staff here at the White House and kick off our Champions of Change.
Thank you, Heather. Good job.
Thank you.
Heather Foster, everybody. Heather Foster. Well, welcome. I did want to take an opportunity to, on behalf of the President, our wonderful First Lady, our senior team at the White House, welcome to the first Champions of Change of Barack Obama's second term. We are excited to be back, decided to get yet one more opportunity to highlight ordinary Americans who have decided that they want to give back and really focus on something that's just larger than themselves. Take their effort, their energy, their expertise, and try to make a difference in their community. You know, the President has often said that the solutions to the challenges of our time aren't going to be found in Washington. Some of the problems might be. But most often the solutions won't be. They're going to come from citizens trying to do their part in their communities, in their neighborhoods, in their families, to make a difference. And that's what Champions of Change is all about. I'm going to lay my credentials for the day out on the table. I was adopted when I was 5 years old, and I was adopted because my mom met one of her colleagues. They were both teachers. My mother was a teacher in the Chicago Public Schools for over 30 years. She's now a librarian. And my father was a guidance counselor in the Chicago Public Schools. And they met at the school where they worked called Jenner Elementary School. Jenner's gone now because the housing project that it served, Cabrini Green in Chicago, is gone. But what I learned from them was a few things. One, the importance of education and how it can transform you, and give you the ability to go from being a smart aleck kid on the north side of Chicago to working for the President of the United States, and so much more. It also, though, teaches you how to open up worlds to those who may not be able to see the vision around them every single day. Everything that they could be might not be in their family or in their neighborhood. And so education can unlock those dreams and transform those students, and in turn transform their families, and in turn transform their neighborhoods, our country, and the world. And so I am so proud to be here with those who have really invested and dedicated in education for African Americans. It is an honor to be on the same stage with you. And I want to thank you there are many here who support their work, who work with them. Many here cheerlead them, they stand on your shoulders or you pick them up along the way. We're a community. And as you heard in the President's State of the Union address, doing everything that we can as a federal government, everything that we can as Americans on education is really the key to our future. And I know people say that, but we intend to do everything in our power to make that a reality. So I just am honored by your presence. You have our support, our affection, and our admiration. And I think we're going to have a terrific discussion. So let's get into it. I am going to turn this over to the woman who runs our Champions of Change program around here. It's great to actually see her standing still for a minute. I don't know if she actually gets any rest, but it's nice to see her standing still. We're going to get into this program. We're really thrilled that you were able to join us. I'm going to turn this over to my colleague at the Office of Public Engagement, Victoria McCullough. Come on up. Thank you so much, everyone. God bless you.
Ready to get it started for the second term. As Michael said, my name is Victoria McCullough. I run the White House Champions of Change program. We're actually in the process of sort of laying down plans for the next few months. So if you guys have any great ideas for other folks we should honor in other spaces, let us know. I want to reiterate a couple things that Heather said before we get started. First is if you're using any sort of social media today, again, it's hashtag WHChamps. And then a quick sort of correction, it's actually whitehouse.gov/live. So for any folks that are at home and want to tune in, it's whitehouse.gov/live. So with that, what we're going to do today is hopefully be able to ask the folks that we're honoring as champions today to talk a little bit about their story, best practices, learn from them, hear about what inspires them every day. So I want to turn over to panel one. It's led by probably one of my favorite people in the administration, Dr. Brenda Gurtin-Mitchell. She has many fans across the way, but she runs the Office of Faith-Based Partnerships over at the Department of Education. And I just want to read off, just to make sure that they get sort of full credit, I want to read off our first panelists. So we're going to be honoring today Kyle Bacon. Over there on the end, Kyle Bacon is a mentor program coordinator at the U.S. Dream Academy Learning Center. Hetty Chang, director of Attendance Works. Philip Jackson, founder and executive director of the Black Star Project. Becky James Hatter, president and CEO of Big Brothers Big Sisters of Eastern Missouri. And Joyce Parker, director of Citizens for a Better Greenville. So with that, let's give them this first panel a round of applause. Dr. Gurtin-Mitchell, I'll turn it over to you.
This is one of the most fun things I get to do when they invite me to come over here and be a part of these very special events, because it gives us a moment to do what we don't do enough of. We don't celebrate enough. And I think celebration is the acts of thanksgiving help us to make it through when things aren't going quite the way we want them to go. We have to have something to look at and say, but this is good. There's some bad stuff going on over here, but it's not all bad. So when I started at the Department of Education, and some of the meetings, I would get a little depressed, because I'm the person that the glass always has to be at least half full. Okay. And we'd be talking about, the failing schools, the failing schools, the failing schools, and we know that they've got some failing schools. But then I heard them say 5% of our schools are labeled as failing, and we have 100,000. So I said, somebody help me, please. Let's talk about that 95,000 some of the time. And then even in those 5%, Let's talk about the things that have been done to help lift up and celebrate even in difficult spaces. And today, we're going to be focusing on the work that's helping to do things to celebrate even in that difficult space. So I need you to act like you're at the game for your favorite team. Come on, come on, come on, come on, celebrate. We got champions in the house. All right, all right, all right. That's what I'm talking about. Get it going, get it going.
The Academy Awards.
Yeah!
Hey, you name it, whatever makes you claim it. It's all right with me. Okay, and so we have about 25 minutes for this panel, and you see we've got 5 people, and they could each talk 25 minutes. And so I am challenging them to give us energetic but kind of brief answers so that we can go through more than one question. Because with this first question, they could start telling you their story, and we'd be here the next 2 steps. Won't work. They'll kick us out. So we're excited to be here. We're going to ask each of them for this first question, I want each of them to answer it. All of us find ourselves in places sometimes where the problems, the issues seem so big. And sometimes we just end up just kind of turning away from it because it is so big. But every now and then something will bother you so much that you say, I may not be able to do much, but I'm going to do something. So the first question, and I'm going to just come down the row, just back toward me, just what happened that made you say, I'm going to do something to make this situation, whichever one your issue addresses, just share with us briefly.
Certainly.
In that phenomenon.
That's an excellent question, Dr. Mitchell. First, to President Obama and the administration and the respective staffs of the White House and Department of Education, I want to say that I'm humbled to be here amongst such distinguished honorees. We know that we individually didn't get here on our own, and who we represent is a product of so many people invested and poured in us, and to so many across the country who do this work without the desire for recognition because it's what they're called to do, and they're passionate about it. And so I want to thank you and the staff for allowing us to be here. But to answer your question, Dr. Mitchell, what inspired me to take on a leadership role? There were 2 critical things that I found. There were 2 critical things that I found for my particular journey. First and foremost for me was my family. I grew up in an environment of leaders. They led at home, they led at church, they led in our community. And I am the product and the beneficiary to come up in an environment where I had a tremendous amount of support. Secondly, I had a chance to work with a good friend. We did intervention work with juvenile offenders, and he was shot and killed by the very type of young man that we serve side by side to work each day. And so now the opportunity that I have to serve as the U.S. Dream Academy Mentor Program Coordinator, there's a mighty seed inside of each of our children that sometimes never gets the opportunity to grow if we don't step up and take on leadership roles. And I think it's absolutely critical that even though we may have a big vision and it may seem daunting, if it doesn't stir you up, if it doesn't concern you, if it doesn't cause you some hesitation, we shouldn't be doing it because we're not thinking big enough. We have to have bright futures and see the possibility for our children. I think each of us up here work in environments that for most people, it's not comfortable to go through. Most people don't want to drive through, let alone park their car and get out and do the work that we do every day. So this is the real deal, the nitty gritty down on the ground. And so we have to be able and be willing to take off the suit and tie and be willing to roll up our sleeves and do the dirty work, the uncomfortable things, so that our children have the opportunities and supports that I benefited from growing up.
Oh, go Kyle! Woo! Yeah!
So, one, it's such an honor to be here, and I know that I'm not here because of the work that I do alone. It's because so many people have taken on the issue that I have on around attendance. And how I got here was because a mentor of mine, Ralph Smith, we've been arguing for a couple of decades now about whether it was race or it was class, and how did you move people into more equal opportunity. And over time, he convinced me it was class, that the problem is we don't have we come for an American dream in this country, but we don't have 2-generation approaches for moving families out of poverty, and it's that the opportunity to do that is far less now than it was ever before. And Ralph had asked me whether I would take on looking at whether kids missing too much school in the very early grades was why kids weren't reading at the grade level by the end of third grade. And if you can't read by the end of third grade, you can't read to learn later on, and your chances of ever graduating are so slim. So that was where I got the opportunity, but at the time, my son, who was in a public school, went to public school with a little boy named Mark, and Mark was from the projects. His mother was trying so hard to get off of poverty, and we connected, and Mark and my son Neil share the same birthday, and we would throw birthday parties together. In first grade, Mark's mother died. What happens when you're poor, when you don't have good health care. And I saw Mark start, who was reading. His mom had tried so damn hard. And, you know, he stopped coming to school. Aunt Mary was having a tough time. He moved out of school. He was stuck in the child welfare system. And he was such an engaged, curious learner, just like my own son. And what motivates me, I didn't think I was taking on a leadership role. I got angry. I got mad. This isn't fair. So that's what inspires me.
Hello, I'm Philip Jackson. And I, too, want to thank President Obama and Secretary of Education Arne Duncan and Congresswoman Wilson for putting together a group like this, a group that is on the cutting edge of change in education and for understanding the value of education. But what drives me every day, it's the children. It's looking into the eyes of children, and especially desperate, hopeless, failing children in American schools. It drives me because I'm in a room today where I don't feel as though I have to apologize for wanting to educate black children. Wow. And sometimes, in so many rooms in America, it's almost as though they're afraid. Mm-hmm. We're afraid to educate black children. Mm-hmm. And so I look at the young children, but then I look at them as they grow up. And I look at many of them as they grow into an existence where they can't fully participate in America. And I say, if I could only have gotten to them when they were younger, we could have changed this. Not only changed them, we could have changed us. We could have changed America. And so in 2013, I want to thank President Obama, and I want to thank Secretary of Education Duncan for realizing that number one, we've got to create students who are globally competent, not just on the south side of Chicago. Students who are globally cooperative, working with children and people and teachers from all over the world, and also students who are globally compassionate. Mm-hmm. That's what we're doing at the Black Star Project, and I thank you again for this opportunity.
Wow. Yeah.
Like everyone else, to thank the administration and the Department of Ed. And I think a lot of our stories are very similar in many ways. I grew up in rural Louisiana, 800 people, a blinking light, and a lot of farmland. But luckily enough, I was in running distance of about 30 first cousins. And it was a wonderful place to grow up. And my dad was an elected official, and he was responsible for representing some of the poorest and toughest areas, not only in that small little town, but in rural Louisiana. And so I grew up just completely surrounded by the most loving, caring adults. And so, as we're getting older and our hair is getting silver, and we tell the kids that back in the day, you not only had your parents, but you had the neighbor and the guy at the grocery store and, somebody around the block. They were just there 24 hours a day. So I got to see and feel what that was like. And I also got to see through the eyes of my father what it was like not to have it. And so that's part one of that answer. Part two is I've been with Big Brothers and Big Sisters 25 years, and 7 years ago, a business mentor said to me, "What value are you creating, and how do you know you're creating it?" And I, honest to God, had no idea what the question even meant. I mean, no one had ever asked me. They asked me how many kids did I serve, how many were on the waiting list. I really had to go back and even think about the question. And I was really horrified that I didn't have the answer, that I didn't really know what value we were creating, what difference did it make. And that's when we started getting into education and looking at what lots of us are looking at, the attendance, the behavior, and success in classrooms. And just knowing that I'd spent that much time benefiting as a child and spent that much time not understanding what I was really doing has kept me busy and motivated and mad, kind of like Hetty, for a while now. So thank y'all. I'm very honored to be here.
Okay, so all of what they said, because I'm not going to say that. I can say me some more stuff, okay? I think in terms of how I got here, I do this work really as a tribute to my great-grandmother who raised my mother, because her mother died when she was 8 years old, and she had the foresight to have her husband's mother to raise my mom when she was 8 years old. And my great-grandmother was a slave up until she was 12 years old. And she witnessed her family being sold, all of the things that we hear about. But she also was that person that was a cook at the time. So she was in the big house. And everything that she got her hands on, she made sure that everybody else got it. My mom talks about taking the tea cakes down the road and, and just sharing whatever they had with everybody. My mom is a cook by trade also, and she'll be celebrating her 97th birthday this year. So, Mom, I hope you're looking. Yeah. And I do that because my mother got an 8th grade education, during that time. My dad passed away on his 94th birthday. This year, he would have been 103 next month. So he was a cab driver. But between the two of them, on her birthday, I said, "Now, Mom, you weren't always this church-going woman, were you?" I said, "Now, how did you come about this house?" She said, "Well, your dad always wanted a car." And I told him, "Now, before you can get a car, we got to ask where to park that car." My dad, when she found the lot, my dad went and found the house because he didn't believe it could happen. She got the lot, he got the house. When he got the house, guess what he did? My dad put a car on the layaway. So, the types of things that they did for us, they had 4 children. He only got a 6th grade education, but they had 4 children at Jackson State. At one time, 4. And my dad went down there one night looking for my brother at midnight. Greenville is 2 hours from Jackson. He couldn't find my brother. You know how children are. My brother called home. By the time my dad walked in, my mom said, "Well, Larry just called." My dad didn't change words. He got back in that car and drove another 2 hours to pick my brother up. I do this as a tribute to them. We never missed anything. We talk about poverty and growing up in these communities, where children didn't have the books to read or whatever. I don't miss any of that. But I'm on that cutting edge of integration. I told my age this year because my family decided they're giving $1 a year, and I got 6 sisters and brothers, and they got children, and they wanted to do 1 year. I said, "Well, if y'all gonna do it that way, y'all owe me another year." So I told them, I'm not telling y'all, but I told them how old I was. But you can do the math. When I was a junior in high school, I had the opportunity to be with all, black teachers. And in our communities, they were the scientists, they were the doctors, they were the lawyers, because they couldn't go anywhere else. They were the mathematicians. So I got a taste of what that looked like, where everybody got educated. We didn't know in the room who wasn't and who had and who didn't have. I sang in the choir. My mom, I don't know where she found somebody that sold everything we needed, but Miss Jones, Herdicine Jones, knew that when we sang, everybody was going to look alike. And she built up on our qualities, on our skills. I was thinking yesterday, like you, Dr. Brenda, that I see the glass half full all of the time. And that's what I do. So what really drives me in this work is parents. I don't have any children. I got 8 sisters and brothers, and all of them allowed me to have an intricate part in their children's lives, to where my nieces and nephews would say now, and they out here looking, they'll say, everybody need an Aunt Joyce because she feels guilty when she say no. And I thought I was being strong. But what I realized was after that, I told them, well, I'm through saying no. The answer's always yes, so come on with it. Come on with it, because I'm not the mom. I look at parents today with children with special needs. I look at parents today with children who just haven't made it, the ones that they are describing. And a lot of times, I won't even let them speak for themselves. You know why? Because if I had to feel as deep the hurt that they have to feel and had to unfold and lay my life out like that, I don't know if I could come back. And I'll look in meetings, and one time this guy asked me, well, Joyce, do you ever try to figure out if they're telling the whole truth? And I told him no. Because guess what? By the time it gets to me, you ain't telling all the truth, and they are not either. But I figured y'all want to work it out, so we ain't finna rehash that stuff no more. All right. Go on, I can tell some more. We're going to talk some more, okay?
Excellent, excellent, excellent. Excellent, excellent. And I can tell from your response that you're able to relate to these stories. I'd like to now center us on the way President Obama often talks about the shared responsibility we have, particularly around the issue of education. That it's not just the family, it's not just the parents. Yes, it starts with the family, but it's the entire community's responsibility. Faith-based, nonprofit businesses, everybody's job. I'm cheating a little bit because I told them I was going to try to ask these questions a certain way, and I'm changing the way I'm asking it, but it's really the same question.
Yeah, right.
If the children were sitting here listening to this answer today, what do you want the children to hear you say that you want to happen for them? You talked about why you're doing it. You're mad, you're celebrating your parents, you're frustrated, you want them to get a better start. But if the children are there looking at you, y'all act like kids for a minute. If the children are sitting there looking at you, how do you help them feel why what you're doing through your various ministries is important for them? Talk to the children. And we're going to start in the middle of the table this time. Let's start with James.
The first thing that I would do to the children at the many schools that we work in Chicago is apologize to them for me and my generation letting them down and not taking care of the real business that we should have been taking care of. I got my party on, got my drill on, and I did not consider this question that you're talking about, that I would be sitting in front of children who are looking at me, wanting something from me, and that basically I wouldn't have it. And so I would apologize to those children, and then I would tell them, this is your world. We've made some mistakes with the world, all these grown folks. You don't have to make our mistakes. And right now, I'm going to start building this world for you. One of the things that we do at our organization, the Black Star Project, we take education to the streets. We pull it out the university, we pull it out the schoolhouse, and we take it straight to the streets. And so we do education with what they call gangs, with what they call drug dealers, with what they call the unemployed, whoever you are in the community. We work with you. That's how we know that we can make America better. But you're absolutely right. It starts with the children.
Becky, what would you say to the children?
I promise you I will be there. I worry a lot. Boy, you're really getting to me, these questions. My gosh. I worry about the revolving door of adults in and out of kids' lives. Deeply worry about that. And so, we're all talking about family. It's just amazing to me that every story talked about when we were kids, somebody gave us something, somebody was there for us. And I think that's a simple idea, but complex some days and hard other days. And I think for kids to know that we're going to be there, you know, in the best of times and the worst of times, and you can't run me off. You know, I don't care what you do. I don't care how, you know, mean, you know, you are to me. I'm sticking here. I'm coming back. And I would be really sincere. I would make sure I am going to fulfill the promise. I am going to be here. I'm not going to leave you. And I think the other thing is, it just haunts me. My husband's in the crowd, and he is going to so hate this. But if you know me at all, I made him, before we got married, do a mission, vision, and values and set goals. So he banged his head on the steering wheel about that. But we wrote a mission together. It's so pathetic, I know, but it's true.
That's powerful. Encouraging.
And it was to live a joyful life. And I want that same thing for every kid and every person I know, to live a joyful life. And what joy is to you may be different for all of us. But when you wake up in the morning, it's to live a joyful life. And I think the only way you live a joyful life is when you are surrounded by a very long time by the people who care about you. And when you fall apart and it all comes down on you, and it will at some point in your life, there's somebody that you absolutely know that you can count on. And I know I don't have to ask anybody. The definition of a great friend, you don't even know it, but you always say it's someone that'll be there for me. So I would make that promise to children.
So what I want children to know is I believe in you, and I believe you can achieve your dreams. But we've got to have a deal to achieve your dreams. The deal is you got to get to school every day. And if you miss too much school, 2 days every month, you're off track. Your deal is you got to help make sure that you come to school because that's your job. My job is to figure out when you can't get to school what's going on. And what we have to do is shift from blaming kids, blaming people when kids can't get there. It's a sign that something's not working. It's a sign that the kid's disengaging. The punitive approaches are not what we need here. What we need are positive approaches where we start by trying to understand, and we cannot individualize this. This is not all about individual problems and kids and families not caring. They care, they have dreams, but they sometimes can't make it. And we, as a society, have a job to come together to figure out what's going on. If the reason you're not making that is because it's not safe to walk to school, then we got to figure out walking school buses. If the reason you're not making it is because you're living in a community which has been so environmentally degraded that there's asthma and you're having a tough time, then we got to figure out health care. We got to figure out how we're going to dealing with asthma. If the reason you're not coming to school is because we have really screwed up suspension and discipline policies and we're actually pushing you out of school, then we got to take a hard look. So they do have responsibility. They and their families got to get to school, and we also have our responsibility, which is to understand what we do that gets in the way of them fulfilling their dreams.
All right, Ms. Joyce.
Well, you know, when you said puzzle, this image came in my mind because just about a month ago, we were at our high school. And one of the things we're doing with our SGA, and I really believe if I were talking to you as young people, as I was talking to them, you are the solution. It's you. But why are you the solution? It is because of your friends. It is because of your neighbors. It's because of the person sitting beside you. When the election this year happened, in my sister's home, we had the party like everybody else does, which wasn't really a party. We had the liver cheese and and all that good stuff. But anyway, but it was 6 generations. You got me. You know about the liver cheese, okay? We had the liver cheese and stuff, y'all. It was and the hot wings, okay. And so we had the real thing about that was we had 6 generations there. My mom, my sister, her daughter, and her teenage daughter, and her baby. And for me, my niece is the Senate person over the House or something. You have to tell me about that. In the SGA. And so she's a very good leader. But, sometimes when our children, do things that, that tend to be whatever, because I'm gonna tell you, I'm choosing my language about that, because what we recognized early was she'll never have her first child again. And I was not willing to let her miss that experience regardless. So she overcompensates in school, and I'm using that just as a term to make the point. When I talk to them, I say, your classmates now, let's focus on those seniors who would graduate this year if they pass their state exam. They've done everything but pass their state exam. What would that look like? What could you all do to help that? And so as a leader, she said, well, they're going to have to just start being motivated. She said, because I was motivated, and I did this, and I really worked hard, and I did this, and I did whatever. I said, yeah. I said, you're right. You're really right. I said, but what about the young man that just told one of my coworkers that he got suspended for 10 days, but he couldn't come back to school until he, brought his mom back? And he said, man, I ain't even saw my mom in 30 days. Thank you. That's what the children did, just what you did. Because I wanted to flip that. Yes, I'm proud of her, but she got a whole circle around her that supports her, that believes in her. But until we get young people to take themselves out of the equation in the way that they are the greater than, but becomes the plus and the equal to, we're not going to get there. So we told them, so y'all make up some posters and put on the wall. How can you encourage your classmates? Well, we took the test, so we'll go and work with them. Because the teachers, they didn't take the test, and they teaching them one way, and if we're in the room, that'll work. I said, but what else? How can you encourage them? They took a poster. I say, there's a puzzle. Let them know that they are the missing piece of the puzzle. Some of them got together, and they did just that. They drew the puzzle and right in the middle. I know. My time is up, people. You get me. I'll be back.
But you got the puzzle pieces.
I got the
All
puzzle pieces.
All right.
Okay,
You're
you
telling
got
the
me.
children the right thing.
Thank you for helping
Brother
me.
Kyle.
Ms. Joyce, I'm going to bring this home for you.
Thank you, Kyle. I knew somebody could do it. Thank you, Kyle.
Dr.
Go
Mitchell,
ahead.
I appreciate how you reframed this question. What I would say to our children who are here is what our staff tell our dream kids in our learning centers all across the country each afternoon, that each child has a dream, that you have a dream, and we're going to support you, and we're going to provide opportunities for that to grow. Right now, I'm missing high tea at our learning center here in Washington, D.C. Each afternoon in our learning centers, we deliver our 3 pillars of academic skill building, character building, and dream building. And as a part of our character building curricula, right now what's happening with our young people is an extension of our etiquette workshop that one of our dedicated volunteers has been pouring into our students. And that's a build-up, that's a lead into how we're supporting their dream into our flagship project of our Dream Gallery, where our students are making visual representations of what they want to be, what they want to do when they grow up. The second point to this is that everyone has a gift. And when our young people come into the center, our volunteers, our mentors, folks in this audience, and folks who are watching online, when they come into our learning centers, that they're coming in to bring something. They're coming in to sow and to pour into our young people, and this is going to support you in achieving your dream.
Amen.
All right. Thank you, Kyle.
Okay. And this is the last question for this panel. And I'm going to start with Ms. Joyce. And then we're going to just work our way back
And
down
you
the
stop me
line.
when you get ready. Or some of y'all can. I don't care.
You're going to have to just kind of imagine about 90 seconds.
Okay.
Imagine about 90 seconds.
Okay.
Now, this time, President Obama's sitting out there.
Hey, where? Show me. Oh, my
Imagination,
God.
come on.
Oh, my
Go
God.
with me here.
Oh, my God.
And he's saying,
Oh, Lord.
based on your experiences, what's the next thing you'd like to see happen moving forward, educational excellence for African American students?
The
What's
next
the
thing.
next step you want us to take?
Thank you,
He's
President.
out there.
No, I'm looking back here, because if I look out there and see him, y'all, it's over, okay? I'm going to look out here with you, okay? It's going to be over. And I told my people at church Sunday it would be over. Okay. Now, see, that doesn't count for my 90 seconds. I don't know. That counts for my I'm trying here. But look, let me say this to you. I'm glad you asked that question, President Obama. The next thing that I really want to see is that we understand that education is a puzzle that has all the pieces. It's a unified effort that everybody does everything that they're supposed to do. It is a process that starts from A and goes to Z, but it is not a constant distraction. One of the hardest things that I find in trying to support education in my community is every time we think we've caught up, somebody changes the game. And it doesn't work. I think we have what it works. Now, if there are teachers out there, I applaud you. If there are principals, superintendents, administrators, school board, yeah, you know what it takes. But you can't keep letting folks tell you that you got to break it up every time you feel like, or somebody else feel like it needs to. Let's teach the reading. Let's teach the math. Let's do the rigorous curriculum. But let's keep doing it. Let's do it in a process. First graders now in our community, they started a comprehensive reading program about 2 years ago. That's fine for them. But what about those that's in the 10th, 11th, and 12th graders that you cleared that they didn't get it? We don't need a magnet school. And we sure don't need a charter school. We need schools to continue. We need schools to continue. At some point, there has to be a history. And we train parents to come in and say, what is he doing wrong? What do the test scores say? But then next year, you do another test. And then parents understand it, but President Obama, for you, I would stop. Yeah.
All right.
I'm stopping for the president, okay? But y'all got that right. You got me, okay?
We got you.
Unified. No charter.
We
you
thank
so much.
champion Joyce Parker.
Thank you. Yes, thank you. President, I love you. I love you. I told my church I'd tell him that too. I love you, President Obama. Michelle, you too.
Okay. I think a lot about our parents and how to, I know the term that's always used is how to get parents to engaged, and certainly I think at the end of the day that's probably a pretty good way to express it. But I want to figure out how to get parents to really know how important they are, how significant they are, how much we care about them, because I think somewhere between the not engaged and the engaged, they've lost some sense of how valuable they are and how significant they are. And I think in some of the communities in which we work, where some of the kids are struggling the most, it's been a long time since someone filled these parents up with a sense of worthiness. And they are, I don't know what the word is, afraid, but they just don't feel welcome. They feel out of place. They don't feel the kind of self-confidence and strength and worthy. And therefore, if they don't have it within them, it's very hard. It's actually impossible to give away what you don't have. So as I think about, there's lots of things, collecting more data, analyzing, all of that. And I'm a big champion for all of those. But just on the ground, just in the day, just in what is going to turn this around, I think about the parents a lot.
Champion Becky.
I agree. As important as schools, teachers, and elected officials are, parents, families, and communities are more important. And I would ask the president to find a way, to create a way to invest in parents, families, and communities as being key educational drivers in society. I want to thank my lovely wife, Reverend Catherine Jackson, who wasn't able to be here today. She's taking care of my 94-year-old aunt, Mildred Dozier, so I want to say hello to them.
Wow.
But I also want to say that when communities take ownership of education, then education is successful. And so at the Black Star Project, we do the Million Father March. We were in 600 cities last year with fathers taking their children to school. In Chicago, we've created a Saturday university system where communities create their own schools for children on Saturdays. And they augment what's happening during the week. And there are just so many ways that parents, families, and communities can add value to the American education proposition that right now we're missing. So I would ask the president to please do that.
Wow.
Champion
Yeah.
Philip.
Thank you. I would ask the president to keep in mind that we need data to drive action and create transparency and create the situations in which communities, families, schools, kids working together can turn things around. We need data because I know that we actually don't right now even calculate, we don't monitor in most places whether kids are missing so much school for any reason that they're academically at risk. We look at unexcused tardiness. We don't even have federal law requiring that state and local databases have attendance data so we can do it. Wow. The federal government should be making sure we have that and we invest in that. And then we have to equip localities to know how to use that data right. Because you know what? If a child in first grade in Oakland is chronically absent in 1 year, by sixth grade, the same child, he's 5 times more likely to be chronically absent in sixth grade, has lower test scores, higher suspension rates. If they're 2 years in elementary school of chronic absence, it's 8 times higher. 3 years of chronic absence in elementary school, it's 18 times higher levels of chronic absence by sixth grade. We never gave that child a chance to learn, and we're not using the data that we already collect every day to trigger better action. And again, the better action is not punitive action. The better action is making sure that we can bring folks, whether it's mentors from Big Brothers, Big Sisters, whether it's VISTA volunteers, who can do that personalized early outreach to make sure that every child knows someone cares about them, believes there's a better future, and then we can use the insights we gain from that to change the conditions that are preventing us from allowing generations of kids to succeed. Thank you.
Champion.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm the son of a deacon and a lifelong educator. So growing up, I spent a lot of time in church. And if I could, as my pastor would do, I'm going to give you guys 3 quick points, as well as the president. First and foremost, we have to bridge this generational gap, particularly in education. We have a generation that's ahead of me who have a tremendous amount of order, wisdom, and experience. But because the shift in the dynamics of the economy and the shift in the dynamics of the landscape, that skill set has changed a little bit. Now, in our centers, we have little people, young ones, dream kids, who have a tremendous amount of skill. If you sat and watched a 9, 10, 11-year-old with any type of gadget, they can manipulate and go through it like nobody's business, but they lack order. We have to be able to bring these worlds together. In our world, we have to be able to do it with our mentors and as volunteers and doing more capacity building. Secondly, there's a drain of leadership, particularly at the administrative level of African Americans. And we have to provide mentorship from the professional level so that when our best and our brightest are put in positions to lead, that they're not set up in situations to fail, where situations are so drastic and they're under such a time crunch that if they don't get results, it was all their fault. But if they do, they have a magic wand, they get cherry-picked and move someplace else to perform a miracle all over again. And so we have to be able to take our best and our brightest and provide mentorship, both in our nonprofit sector as well as in our public school sector. And lastly, Dr. Mitchell, is we have to break down the silos of segmented information. And this forum right here is an excellent catalyst and start to be able to do that. There's best practices that have just been shared here. I've taken notes and learned a tremendous amount, and I don't want the discussion to end. I'm going to take notes when the next panel comes up. And having environments like this where hardworking people, sometimes we get so into our lane and working so hard, we don't share interrelated information that's critical for the success of our organizations and our businesses. And so those are the 3 points that I would give to the president.
Wow.
Champion Kyle.
Yeah.
And the big takeaway is that all of us have something that we can share on behalf of our children. And if our children are feeling trapped, to help them understand that education is a liberator. Education is the gate to freedom. And as Dr. Haidt would say, open wide the freedom gates by teaching our children that they can be whatever they dream that they can be. Won't you thank this wonderful panel, as wonderful panel too. Come here.
We're going to welcome up our second panel. And as they're getting set up, I want to mention, and because this is another reason why we started Champions of Change, we've learned in the White House and in the Office of Public Engagement in the first term that what it takes to move the needle are these stories. So all of you guys have stories to tell about these issues, and this is one of the craziest weeks in Washington right now. Most of you have probably heard about the sequester. But these are the programs that are very much being threatened right now. There is no way around it. They are very much on the chopping block. A lot of the work that is being done, there's a lot of potential for us to just sort of backtrack. So I can't stress enough how important it is for you as an educator, you as to the champions, to continue to tell those stories, because that's what we've learned kind of moves the needle forward and kind of really keeps Congress and the White House accountable for a lot of this. And so want to stress that again as you guys are tweeting and taking this back home. That's what matters, and that's so incredibly important. So with that, I want to turn it over to our second panel. We've got Robert Balvans, who's a professor at Johns Hopkins University School of Education and the co-director of Everyone Graduates Center. We have Esther L. Bush, president and CEO of the Urban League in Greater Pittsburgh. We have Haben Girma, the disability rights activist and a law student at Harvard. Yeah, we got a few fans back there. Michael Graham, who is with children with special needs activist. And then we have Aaron Jones, Director of Equity and Achievement at the Federal Way School District. And then I want to turn over to David Johns. This is his second day. I joked with him that one of the rites, we joked about one of the rites of passage at the White House is getting stuck at the gate. It's a good initiation. So with that, he's going to get a better intro later at the end of the program, but I want to turn it over to David Johns.
Thank you.
Thanks, David.
Thank you so much. I don't know about you, but I'm fired up and ready to go again. So we're just going to jump into it. And unless you feel so inclined to clap, I think we can have more opportunity for discussion if you guys would hold it to the end. But I know if we're in church, the spirit might move, so I'm going to just let you go with it. And so I want to pick up where the last panel ended and say thank you to the good doctor for laying a solid foundation. Frequently when educators come together, we spend time talking about the problems, right? And we end beginning to talk about the solution. And so acknowledging that, I want to start this conversation, and Dr. Balfans, we'll start with you, very appropriately. What is the single thing that you want to identify as not the solution, but a solution to solving many of the challenges that we know our students, our schools, and our communities face?
Sure, thank you. I think that the big solution is to recognize that the challenge is really severe. So the good news is we know that African American graduation rates are up for the first time in almost 40 years. They're up about 6 points over the past 4 years. That's really good news. But the challenge is that means they're still at 66%. It still means that 1 out of 3 is not getting a diploma when there's no work to support a family in the 21st century if you don't have a high school diploma. If you can't support a family, you can't be part of the American fabric. And so to answer that, we got to go big. And what I would do is I would have a design competition that says, let's design middle and high schools so it's routine in 8th grade that you can get high school credit. And it's routine in 12th grade that you can get college credit. So you're getting ready for the next level in a place where you're comfortable. And that lets you do college in 3 years, so we can give you more financial aid. And then in that 4th year, you do national service back in the pipeline, given the mentoring and the tutoring we need to make sure kids can do those more challenging courses. And we've created a virtuous cycle where we have the person power needed to make sure that everyone can have a pathway from poverty to post-secondary success.
Perfect, thank you. I'll allow it. Let's keep it going. Ms. Bush.
Yes, thank you. I tell you, this has been a most energizing session listening to the first panel. And what I would like to state here is we need to find a way to love our children and let them know that we love them. And that includes high expectation. And the high expectation has to be couched in the support and expectation that we have for the teachers, for the children, for the superintendents, and for the school system. And so many of you in this room will be familiar with Common Core state standards. I think that Common Core state standards honestly are a slice of the answer that we need to help move us forward. But with everybody engaged and involved, the parents, we have to remember that we have to meet our parents where they are. And in so many situations, not just the poverty, but where they were academically, and has anybody ever thought to have high expectations for them? So I believe we have to find a way to meet the students and the parents in our communities where they are without blame and take them where they need to be. And I'm one of those people that as we look at all of the different things that are out there trying to address the issues in education, I think that Common Core state standards can take us a little bit closer to where we need to be.
Aaron?
So I believe the greatest challenge in this nation is how we talk about the education of African American children. I'm a linguist, I speak 4 languages, and one of the things that I've learned over time is that how we talk about a problem is exactly how we address it. Having not grown up in this country, when I came here, what was really a challenge to me was the way we talked about the education of children who look like me. The achievement gap is one of my least favorite terms in the world, and one of the reasons is it's a deficit model. It suggests that our children are just a number based on a test that they took in 2 hours on a day. And that's a challenge to me. I have 2 African American boys sitting right in this front row, and they are not just a number. They're singers and actors, and they're gifted. And yet, one of them tests really well and the other doesn't. And so the system tells me that my one son is not gifted. And I can tell you my one son just auditioned for The Voice, so he's very gifted. And so my challenge to us as a nation is let's talk about the education of our children differently. Let's speak about what we can do, not what we can't do or what we suggest some cannot do. And so in our state, we've actually changed, I was part of changing legislation so that now we talk about the opportunity gap, not the achievement gap. Opportunity we can give. I don't have control over how Jerron takes a test on a day, but I absolutely have control over what opportunities I give Jerron to learn the material so that he tests well on that day.
Michael?
I feel personally that one of the biggest things that we can do to influence our education system with our children, and that is develop a passion. And for me, and having a child with special needs, I came to realize very soon that a passion will position you for your purpose. Whatever your passion, but you have to have a passion first. And in order to do that, you have to realize that it's going to be incremental in little things. And I teach my children, the uniqueness of my situation is that I have a child with special needs, but she's differently abled. She can still learn. She still does learn. She's higher functioning. And on the other end of that spectrum, I have a son who's gifted. So I teach them that little things make a big difference. We're just going to engage you enough in a lot of those little things to where you will achieve big things. So I think that we need, the second thing I think we need to do is interfacing with the school system and get over a lot of the myths about the involvement of parents in their children's education and that there's some kind of rivalry going on. There is no rivalry going on. There's just a lack of free flow of information is going both ways in which it should be. So I think once we break down some of those barriers, then we can truly say that we committed to building a better school system, which in turn is going to have higher functioning children in our education system, irregardless of the labels we want to put on them. Let's label their ability and let's support that ability.
Thank you, Michael. And Haben?
It's an honor to be here today. My name is Haben Girma, and my mission is to empower students with disabilities and send encouragement to teachers with disabilities or teachers of students with disabilities. I grew up in the San Francisco Bay Area, and I have both vision and hearing loss, deaf-blind. And my teachers, I was very fortunate to have a great school system that offered me Braille, gave me some sign language training, taught me to use various different technologies. I learned cane travel. And so by developing all these skills and developing a positive attitude, I was able to know that I could go on to college and go on to college. And when I decided I wanted to help others and empower students with disabilities and become a disability rights lawyer, I was able to do so. I'm the first deaf-blind student at Harvard Law School.
So I was gonna highlight that. You just stole my thunder, but it's okay. I want you to say that one more time.
And my mission is to
all right. I'll get to
empower
it again.
students so that Harvard Law School sees more students with disabilities, and I'm not the last one.
So I'm gonna do it right now. I want you guys to know she appropriately said it, but I can't lift it up. I'm tall, so y'all just gonna have to work with the brother. She is the first deaf-blind student who will graduate from Harvard University, but most important is that she won't be the last. Give her another round of applause. So Aaron said, I'm gonna just use my teacher voice, how about that? Aaron said that we have to talk about it, and so that's what I want us to do in the time that we have left, but I want to acknowledge that we will not have enough time to sufficiently have this conversation in this room. Esther is one of the hardest working women in the National Urban League, and on the last panel, Philip talked about communities needing to take ownership of education. Can you talk briefly about what that looks like? How do communities take ownership of education?
Communities have to take ownership of education because they have to invest in themselves. I am extremely pleased to share that in Pittsburgh, we put together something called the African American Achievement Trust. We brought together over 100 African American leaders, and that's leadership with a capital L and leadership with a small l. And so we had the superintendent of schools, we had the chief of police, we had principals, we had deans of schools of education, we had the heads of community projects. So leadership with a small L and a capital L, and brought them together on a retreat and said, here's where we are, here's where our children are, half of our children are not graduating. Do you realize what percentage of our kids are in school that are from foster care parents? Which is why I always underscore the love, because they need love and high expectation, people to believe in them. But we brought together this group of individuals, and we are trying to get them actively engaged in community. Being a 6th grade mentor, of which I am for 2 students, being a mentor for college students, for 12th grade graduation coaches, being involved, giving of your time is the best thing that you can do to assist, and being an advocate. If that means going to the school board and providing testimony, you do not have to have children in school to go down to the school board and provide testimony about what's going on. And not just your closing the high school that you graduated from, but being actively involved and engaged in what's going on in education. What is education reform? What does it mean to you? So educating the community, making sure your voice is heard, making sure that you speak on behalf of all of the children. so that African American children can rise up and so that American children can rise up together even further, because our country is behind.
Awesome. Michael talked about speaking truth to power, and a part of talking about it, as Aaron kicked off, is debunking myths. Bob, can you talk about very quickly maybe the most significant myth that we need to do away with to move forward and having more productive conversations?
Sure, absolutely. And it just reminds me of the question on the first panel, what we would say to children, in this case to high school students. What I would say is take your cell phone, turn it around so the video camera's on you, and tell your story. Because the truth is, the people that have the power to change your conditions don't understand your conditions.
Right.
And the only way they will is if you tell them. So the biggest myth is that students drop out because they don't want to graduate, they don't care, or their parents don't care. And the truth is they care passionately, and they know they have no future if they don't succeed. And they only drop out when they feel there's no other choice, no one cares, and no one is helping.
Okay. I appreciate that. And keeping with the vein of telling your story, on the last panel, Philip discussed the importance of having global competence. Aaron, I want you to talk about the importance of being globally minded.
So I acknowledge my boys in the first set, but I want to acknowledge my parents in the room. My parents are two Caucasians who chose against the wishes probably of their community to adopt black children. And then they chose to raise us in the Netherlands. And so I was raised, I learned my second language at 5 or 6 years old, learned my third at 12, my fourth at 14, 15 years old. I met my first world leader when I was 9 years old, have met a queen, ate lunch with Barbara Bush the day I graduated from high school, have been exposed to incredible things. And as a child, I thought that was normal. My parents taught at the American School of The Hague. It was the United Nations Peace Court School. And I thought it was normal that kids got to travel around the world, kids who look like me. I didn't know any other kids who looked like me, so I just assumed my experience was the experience of everyone else. But I learned when I was 18 years old and came to the United States for the first time, really, I learned that kids like me hadn't had those experiences. And my heart was broken. My heart was absolutely crushed. I'm a basketball player, and I was playing basketball in the streets of Philly as a college student, and when I would tell people I'm from the Netherlands, they wouldn't even say where, they'd say what. And none of the young men I played basketball with had ever even considered college. And I can tell you now, as someone who's played with NBA players, I played with some ballers. And not one of them could even consider college because they didn't know how to read and they didn't know how to write and they didn't know where anything was. And it just was heartbreaking to me to be in Philadelphia, our nation's origin, and to have young people who couldn't read. And I began to visit schools as a junior and senior in college, and I saw elementary schools that had no libraries. How, when you live in the ghetto, in the projects of North Philly, when you have no library, how can you ever envision leaving that place? And so I had this vision of telling my personal story of all the places I'd traveled as a way to export children to their possibility and to their potential. I believe children cannot imagine what they've never seen. And so I began to share my story and take children on this journey. This nation, this world is becoming smaller and smaller and smaller with technology, but our children still, the only taste of the world is on their iPhone, and that is criminal to me. Right. And so I believe that one of the things that we have an obligation to do, particularly for our children, is to show them that our cities are small. And we have to get them outside of the walls of the projects, outside to see the green. I live on the West Coast now. I live in Washington State. And I have people ask me all the time, are there black people in Washington State? There are lots of us. And I really think it would be a gift to do exchange programs where kids from Chicago could come and see our beautiful mountains. I wake up in the morning to Mount Rainier. It's beautiful. But for our black children who live near Mount Rainier to see the projects, I think once we do those kinds of exchanges and we realize our needs are very much the same, it changes the whole landscape of our potential.
So with that in mind, y'all go ahead, your spirit of me. I know how to get out of the way. You started by acknowledging your parents and then talked about the importance of facilitating opportunities. And I'm standing here sort of struck thinking about Chairman Harkin and a lot of the work that he has done to advocate for individuals with disabilities. Michael, can you talk a bit about, I guess, the most important lessons you have learned as an advocate for your differently abled child? And then Haben, I want you to talk about what's most important, the thing that you want people to know as we think about more inclusion.
That's an easy question for me. The thing that I've learned in that is this: how can you develop a policy or want to think that you have my child's best interests if you don't have me at the table when you're talking about that policy? How can you conceivably be successful in something when you don't have all of the necessary voices at the table? That's what I found out when my child's first IEP, my wife is in the audience, Donna, and we had never had a child with special needs before, but we knew she was capable. We had already resolved that. We just had to figure out how we were going to do it. So being green, as I told her, we went to an IEP meeting, and for those who don't know, that's the individual education program. We went to a meeting, and having someone, or those at the table, telling us what was going to be my child's format for her learning, and we didn't know anything about it. I mean, we couldn't understand what you were saying. I mean, we didn't know anything, the rules. We didn't know about the alphabet soup, all of that. So coming out of that meeting, I told my wife, I said, this one's on them. They'll never have us like this again. So from that point on, I became committed. And that commitment was to learn everything I needed to know about my child, what are the laws that were surrounding that ability, and at the same time, as I grew, it came to a point where I learned that I had to interface with the school system and basically teach them what you don't know in order for you to help turn around and help me give what my child needs. So my first true interaction to that was finding out about a program called Partners in Policymaking. So where I didn't have to go out looking for the information anymore. The information basically came to us. It's an 8-month leadership program where we learned about all of the things that parents should know about their children. And from graduating from that course, I had the blessed opportunity to be able to have an opportunity to come here to D.C. for the IDEA partnership, which Patrice Linehan is in the office. She's in the audience right now, and Joanne Cashman. And that's a OSEP arm, investment arm. And what I learned from that was that there are a lot of people across the school system that have the same concerns across the nation. And that was a format where you could get all of the professionals, whatever title you had, but coming to them, it was like, okay, we appreciate that, but we're going to mine down through that, put that on the table, and let's figure out how to coalesce around some important issues. And the issues are children with disabilities and special needs and how they learn. And then you can take that back down to your communities. So from that was my first interaction to really, really becoming an advocate, to the point where I made a commitment to myself to say, you know what? As I had spoken before, saying about little things make a big difference. I wanted to be that little voice at the table from that point on a state level, federal level, or local level, to be at that table, to have that balanced perspective of the parent. Because all of us parents, we love our children, and we are the expert on our children. We're just going to help you to realize that, and then we can get something done, put it on pencil and paper, put it in ink.
Perfect. Haben, again, I'd like for you to speak to the most significant thing that you would like everyone in this room and everyone watching to consider as we work to improve inclusion.
So technology is going to make access to education for students with disabilities much, much easier. And it's had a huge difference in my life in the last 5 or 10 years. So we're having new technologies like iPads and Nooks and Kindles. They have the opportunity to put books in accessible formats for students who need them in Braille or need them in an audio format or need them in large print. So one way for schools to be more inclusive is to think about accessibility when they're going to invest in new technologies. So that's one major issue. Another major issue would be to make sure that teachers of students with low incidence disabilities like deafblindness have access to resources. So OSEP has state deafblind projects, which has been a huge asset to the teachers that were helping me growing up and to students all across the country. So as long as we have resources to get the information out and we have technologies that are accessible, opening doors to education and bringing mainstream products that can be used by everyone, that would make education way more inclusive.
Thank you. I started by asking Bob, specifically given his work on dropout factories, to talk about debunking myths, and would now like to invite everyone else into that conversation. Starting with Haben and then working our way back down, and then Bob, I have a separate question for you. What's the single biggest myth that you would like to dispel?
So the question is, what's the single biggest myth I'd like to dispel?
Yes, ma'am.
Well, so I know there's a lot of misconceptions about the abilities of students with disabilities. My philosophy, which is shared by the National Federation of the Blind, is if students are given skills, if they're taught to do things in a way that would allow them to do things. So if you can't read print, you could read access books by using Braille. So making sure that people know that there are alternatives for getting something done.
Perfect, thank you. Michael?
I think one of the biggest myths is the fact that the thought is that our children don't want to learn.
That's
And they are able to learn. And just running parallel to that is what I said before, is that parents don't love their children enough to get engaged, to be involved. Being the chair of a parent training institute at AACLD for African American children with learning disabilities, we're in a planning mode now to debunk that myth on a big time scale, something that you've never seen before. And that is, we're going to teach the community about our children, ourselves, with those that are leaders in our community. We're planning on a 2014 symposium and training in Columbus, Ohio, on Ohio State University, where we're going to bring the who's who in special education. We're going to bring them together for 4 days, and we're going to talk about the things like the IEP program. What does it involve? We're going to talk about Common Core standards. We're going to talk about prison to pipeline, for young men in our communities. That's just to name a few of the things that we're going to talk about, and we're going to have those that look like us talking about us and helping us, so in turn we can go back to our communities and be the boots on the ground and get some things done. So in essence, we're going to teach African American parents what they need to know to be parents and leaders, because we are both.
So Aaron, before you respond, one of the first lessons everyone should learn in Washington is that you have to be flexible. So we're going to have to cut our conversation short. And so I'd invite you to either respond to the question I asked previously or to offer your final remarks to the audience.
I'll respond. I love this question, actually. I think one of the greatest myths is that African American children are not capable, or they're less capable. If I can speak 4 languages, why can't every other African American child, or more? If you live in Africa, many African people speak 10 to 15. Mm-hmm. All 3 of my children have taken, I have a daughter who's not here because she's competing in a drama. She's one of the top 10 drama students, African American drama students in our state, and she's in a competition right now, so go girl. But all 3 of my children have taken an AP exam, or have taken an AP class. If they can do it, anyone can. My district actually has a new policy now that any student of any color who meets any part of our state assessment is automatically enrolled in the most rigorous class in that content area. And all the teachers said, oh my gosh, we're going to have to lower the bar for AP and IB and Cambridge classes, and we're going to have to dumb down the curriculum. Do you know that the College Board just gave us an award because we raised our scores on the AP exams? And so one of the things that we've got to debunk is that our children are capable. We just have to raise the bar, and we have to provide them with the supports they need.
Thank you. Esther Bush.
Actually, I'll just continue on with Erin's statement because I strongly feel exactly the same way. The Urban League of Greater Pittsburgh started a charter school in 1998, and it's kindergarten through 5th grade. And what we did was, if you have an A, it's not a 90, it's a 93 or something. We raised it up. So when they leave us and go to another school, that they will be able to compete and excel. The school is focused on math and science. There's over 40 elementary schools in the city of Pittsburgh, and we had the highest reading score of any of the 40 schools. Our kids just need to be met where they are and encouraged to go all the way. Our kids are brilliant. They are brilliant. We have to tell them that. We have to tell the parents to tell them that. We have to tell the parents have to put in service hours with the children every school year. We do not send report cards home. If the parent doesn't come in to pick up the report card, then you won't know your child's grades. And so when you put things in place that tries to assist some of the problems that we have in the traditional public schools, then we can help our children and our parents move forward. Let me also quickly say that we are equal partners with traditional public schools. We're one charter school with a couple hundred kids. The other thousands of kids are in the public school. We want to work with everybody. It's important for our parents and our children to have choices, and it's important for the resources to be provided so the parents can make informed decisions and so that the children know that they can achieve to the greatness that we know they all possess.
Thank you. Bob, you are invited to answer the same question as well.
Sure, I would just say that the real answer is it's on us. That sitting here today, we know which high schools in America students drop out from. We know in those high schools and in the middle schools that feed them who, absent effective supports, is not likely to graduate. So our choice is either to engage in what I call insider trading for the social good and take advantage that we know today what's going to happen tomorrow to change it, or we can sit in the sidelines and lose another generation.
Thank you. So there was a lot that was said. We're going to offer them a round of applause in a minute. But I want to take a cue from Philip and just leave you with 4 things that struck me that I hope we can continue to talk about as this conversation moves forward. One, synthesizing what a lot of people already said, very simply put, as Dr. Cosby says, is to put bodies on them. We need to physically put our bodies on children, let them know that we love them, that we believe in them, and that, as already been said, we will support them in achieving their dreams. The second is to ensure that parents, families, and communities, and students as well, have a seat at the table. I appreciate that there was a student here who was able to articulate her own perspective while she's in that space. The third thing, is to think about children up front, right? They cannot be an afterthought. And the footnote here is that we need to think about all of our children. And then the last thing is that we all owe it to ourselves and to our children to find a way to help students tell their own stories and to support them in achieving their dreams. Give our panel a round of applause. And I'm now going to turn the program back over to Heather Foster.
Thank you, David. And so I hope everyone has enjoyed the 2 panels that we've had this afternoon to talk about education and to highlight some of the great work done by so many of the individuals on this panel. At this time, I want to turn things over to our very special guest from the Department of Education, Secretary Arne Duncan.
Thank you so much. I'm thrilled to be here, and I wanted to just do a couple quick things. To our champions of change, could they all please stand? I know you've been recognized before. Let's give them another huge round of applause. These for me are some new friends, some old friends, and people I have tremendous respect for. And everyone here knows that we have to continue to challenge the status quo. We have to get better, and there's no one group of us who can do it. You can't do it all in the community. You can't do it all from the schools. You can't do it all from Washington to the White House. All of us have to do more and challenge each other. And the example that you guys set for me, for the country, is extraordinary. So thank you for the difference that you're making. Please challenge me and my team to be a good partner. If we're serious about fundamentally, radically different outcomes, we got to do that. So thanks for what you're doing. Secondly, obviously, is just to talk about the White House initiative on educational excellence for African Americans. This is a big deal. And there are some real positive signs, and Bob's done some great work on this. High school graduation rates are going up for African Americans. College enrollment is up a little bit. College graduations are up. But I think it's so important that we tell the truth in all this. And the truth is, if you look at our data, the civil rights data collection, by every single measure, African Americans are nowhere close to where we need them to be. And so we should celebrate the progress, we should celebrate the movement we have made, but this is not a time to say mission accomplished, to rest on our laurels. Graduation rates are unacceptably low, dropout rates are unacceptably high, special ed rates are unacceptably high, incarceration rates are unacceptably high. I read something that stunned me. Again, it's just the power of the numbers. Of our high school dropouts, and we know those are too big, 60%, 65% of our African American men who drop out of high school will be locked up by the time they're in 35. So the majority, 2/3, will be in jail, will be incarcerated at some point when they drop out of high school. So the consequences, the stakes today, as all of you know, are much higher than 10 or 15 or 20 years ago when maybe you could drop out of high school and go get a decent paying job and do something. Those jobs are gone. They're not coming back. And folks who graduate from high school, go on to some form of higher education, there are some significant real opportunities out there. But without that foundation, without that base, there's just no way to end cycles of poverty and social failure. So we have to look at every level, starting with our babies and what we're doing around early childhood education. We're trying to make a huge play there. How we continue to drive K-12 reform. I know you heard about some of that when I was walking in. How we make sure a lot more folks are not just graduating from high school, but graduating college and career ready and taking that next step. 4-year universities, 2-year community colleges, trade, technical, vocational training. It doesn't matter what it is, but some step on that education journey has to follow high school. That high school diploma today is no longer good enough. So we need to push each other. We need to challenge each other. We need to challenge the status quo. This is what so many of you had devoted your lives to doing. And we need to do it from the highest levels and to have the president step up and say, we know we must do better. This is not just for the black community. This is for the country. All of you here know that this country is going to become majority, minority very, very soon. Many of our largest states, that's what the population looks like now. And so it is the right thing to do for our black families and our black community, but it's the right thing to do for the nation, and we need the nation to get behind this. So appreciate the tremendous opportunity we have with this president, with this time, to try and move as fast as we can in a very different direction. Lots of challenges, budget challenges, crazy sequester challenges, which I still don't understand. I'm trying to figure out. I still can't figure out what sequester means, so I'm spending a lot of time fighting this battle. But for all the drama or dysfunction, frankly, in Washington, kids can't wait. Kids can't wait. And we need to find ways, despite the lack of resources, every single day we got to find ways to make a difference. You heard here, and from all of us that have worked in the community, we just got to give our kids a chance. And if we give them a chance, 98, 99% will seize on to that. It's when there are no options, when there are no alternatives, that's when the wrong thing starts to happen. And all of us, faith-based institutions, nonprofits, businesses, social service agencies, churches, schools, everybody has to come to the table and figure out how we stop letting kids fall through the cracks. So a lot of work, a lot of challenges, but for me, just an amazing opportunity. And for me, just to be a small part of this team working on this at this historic time, I can't tell you how personally gratifying, how lucky I feel to have this chance. It's the kind of thing I couldn't have dreamed about 5 or 10 years ago. And again, please challenge me and hold me accountable to be a good partner, and where me and my team can or should be doing more, I want to hear about it. This is not, we can't, we have a limited amount of time here. We can't wait 4 or 5 years. Every single day we got to get better and push us to do that. When you start something like this, you need a great leader. I know you've heard from him, but I'm just so pleased to sort of reintroduce David Johns, who's going to be the first executive director of this new initiative. Give him a round of applause. Seems like we maybe made a good pick there. And if all you would have started throwing tomatoes, we would have been in trouble. And not to go on and on, but David's a young man who is extraordinarily well educated, who is passionate about the community, who has taught babies, who has taught at the collegiate level, who could be doing lots of things, probably making a heck of a lot more money with his skills and talents and time and energy. But this is in his heart, it is in his bones. I always say half this work is intellectual, and he's as smart as anyone you're going to meet, but the other half, and maybe the more important half, has to come from the heart. And this work, I think, is very, very personal. So we talked to some amazing candidates. I would say the unanimous choice, the consensus choice, was David. Thrilled it worked out. And again, please welcome our first executive director, David Johns.
Let me just begin by thanking each of you for the opportunity to share in today's celebration. I am grateful to President Barack Obama, to Secretary Arne Duncan, to the Congressional Black Caucus, Dr. Freeman Hrabowski, and to everyone who has worked to make the dream of the first ever White House initiative on educational excellence for African Americans a reality. And I congratulate each of the champions we have honored today. I salute you and the millions of other educators who do God's work by giving our children greater opportunities. I'm incredibly humbled and honored to serve President Obama as our country's first ever director. And for me, the opportunity to enhance educational opportunities for all American children is a dream come true. To say I have been preparing for this opportunity my entire life is an understatement. And I look forward to bringing my experience from the classroom, Capitol Hill, and working with communities throughout the country to make this very important initiative a success. During the most recent State of the Union address, President Obama once again reminded the world of the importance of learning, from increasing access to high-quality early learning opportunities to ensuring that all children are prepared for and supported in completing college. The President also reminded us of the power of dreams. But as we all know, it is not enough to simply dream. Children, youth, and adults throughout this country need opportunities to realize their dreams. Like the President, First Lady Michelle Obama, and so many leaders in this room have experienced, and as we have discussed, no one achieves their dreams alone. Growing up in Los Angeles, California, it was never the expectation that I would stand here before you today. But my mother, who's sitting right there with that camera, my support system, you give a round of applause. With my mother, my support system, and I worked hard to ensure that I had every opportunity to reach my full potential. They made sure that I was surrounded by effective educators, enrolled in classes that prepared me for college, felt safe and secure in school, and that I was learning inside and outside of the classroom. They made sure that I had every opportunity to develop my head and my heart. And this initiative will work to ensure that the story of how early and often investments in a child's future lead to success becomes the norm, particularly in the African American community. As many of you know, for far too many children of color, the desire to dream is suppressed because too many barriers to equal opportunity still remain. African Americans lack equal access to highly effective teachers and principals, challenging college preparatory classes, and supporting completing higher education. These challenges are only magnified for black boys who are often expelled from school before they even begin kindergarten and disproportionately experience referrals to special education. And as I thought about the commitment of the men and women who educate our children and the work that lies ahead of the initiative, I was reminded of a Senate candidate named Barack Obama who said, "We must eradicate the slander that says a black youth with a book is acting right." And see, I can relate. Growing up, my biggest challenge was that I was a kid who actually liked school. In Inglewood, California, being book smart was the fastest way to get you beat up or get your sneakers stolen. And now, as I stand here at a time when that Senate candidate, now our president, has made being intelligent cool, I often wonder what this means to children across America, children like my beautiful niece, Jordan. I wonder how they are inspired by our president. And at its core, my dream was and is to serve my community. I want to be clear in overstating the role that educators play in helping each of us to find and to live our dreams. Educators are public servants that help us design and follow the blueprint to these dreams. And I want to take this moment to thank my mother for being my first and most important educator. She instilled in me early on an appreciation for lifelong learning, and she equipped me with the foundational tools that I depend on to this very day. And my life's journey is a testament to the transformative power of a quality education. As a classroom teacher, I saw my childhood dream of being an example of encouraging others to live their dreams materialize. And I have been blessed to learn the process of federal policymaking from some of the nation's greatest legislators, including President Bill Clinton, Congressman Charles Rangel, the late Senator Edward M. Kennedy, and most recently, Chairman Tom Harkin. I know firsthand how government and policy can make a real difference in the lives of children, and I will use these experiences and the relationships I have developed to inform the work of the initiative. The initiative will support the president's desire to restore this country to its role as a global leader in education, to strengthen the nation by improving educational outcomes for African Americans of all ages, and to help ensure that all African Americans receive a quality education that properly propels them for college, productive careers, and satisfying lives, including in the following ways: highlighting the role of educators and administrators in increasing and improving access to high-quality learning opportunities while also finding ways to support them in their work. Supporting efforts to increase the number of African American teachers and administrators, specifically the number of African American males in the profession. Enhancing investments in high-quality early care and education programs, specifically increasing the number of African American children enrolled in quality child care and preschool programs. By reinforcing connections to rigorous K-12 courses and increasing access to critical supports, including by strengthening relationships between schools and communities and local businesses, social service organizations, healthcare providers, and parent and volunteer organizations. And by helping to increase the number of African American students applying to, persisting in, and successfully completing college to ensure that we meet the President's 2020 goal of becoming the world leader in college graduates. I leave you today with the words of one of our most distinguished scholars, Langston Hughes. He wrote a poem in 1926 entitled Dreams. Hold fast to dreams, for if dreams die, life is like a broken winged bird that cannot fly. Hold fast to dreams, for when dreams go, life is a barren field, frozen with snow. For me, Dreams emphasizes the importance of ensuring that we support all of our children in the realization of their dreams. And with these words in mind, the work of the White House Initiative on Educational Excellence for African Americans begins. We will work hard to ensure that unfulfilled dreams are the outlier and achievement of dreams becomes the expectation. We will ensure that educational excellence becomes the norm for African American children across this nation. Thank you.
Well, what a wonderful afternoon. So we are so proud and excited that David, I know I'm personally excited, that David will be taking this role. As someone who I originally worked at the Department of Education when I came to the administration, working for Secretary Duncan and Brenda Gurdon Mitchell over there, learned so much about education. And my background is education and social policy. So I know what it is for our students to have these opportunities and to see these amazing people. Just thanks to the champions again for your great work. Let's make sure we give them a round of applause. I just want to make sure we point out a few other people from anyone else from the Department of Education. If you can stand up. We have Kimberly Watkins Foote, a few others in the back. We have some good staff. We have Jim Shelton. Raise your hand. And Roberto Rodriguez from our Domestic Policy Council, Special Assistant to the President on Education. So thanks, everyone, for coming again. We're going to have our champs on stage for one last picture, and then we do have to depart. And I'm sure you can hear it's raining, so everyone, please be careful on your exit out. But we're just going to ask everyone to exit out this way. So champs, come to the stage. We'll take our final picture, and thank you for joining us this afternoon.